Imagine this. For weeks, the world watched one of the most photographed women on the planet vanish from the public eye. Rumors were flying. Wild theories. Some said she was fighting for her life. Others said something far worse. Then, without warning, Princess Catherine walks back into the light. She's smiling. She's waving. She looks fine. But behind that perfect smile, something was happening that nobody knew about. And the only reason we know any of it now is because of a piece of paper that was never meant to see the light of day. A private medical report. Leaked. By someone inside the palace. And here's what it didn't say. That report didn't just explain why Catherine disappeared. It revealed a story so emotional, so full of palace pressure and personal sacrifice, that it would break your heart. And the biggest shock. The woman you saw that day wasn't the same woman who signed that report. And the palace is terrified you might find out why. So, what was really in that medical record? And why did Catherine decide to return against every doctor's advice? This is the story they never wanted you to hear. Here's where everything changed. Let's rewind to that morning in March. The country was in a frenzy. Kate, the Princess of Wales, had been out of action for months. The official story was simple: planned abdominal surgery, then a recovery period. But that story was falling apart. Every time the palace released a statement, it cracked under pressure. They said she wasn't working. But a witness spotted her in a car near Windsor. They said she was resting. But a local mother swore she saw her at a school event. The contradictions were piling up. And then someone pushed a document into the hands of a reporter. That document was the private medical report. At first glance, the report looked like a standard health update. Dates. Medical terms. A recovery timeline. But buried in the middle of that clinical language was a sentence that changed everything. In it, Catherine had personally written, in her own words, that her one true wish was to return to royal duty before the end of spring. She wanted to appear at the Trooping the Colour Parade. She wanted to stand next to King Charles. She wanted to wave to the crowds. But the report also contained her doctor's recommendations, and they were the exact opposite. They recommended she stay away for at least another 8 weeks. They recommended a full withdrawal from public appearances. They warned that any early return could set her recovery back months or worse. That's the conflict. That's the emotional battle the palace never told you about. But here's the part almost nobody knows. That document wasn't just stolen. It was carefully selected. The person who leaked it didn't leak everything. They left out a second page. And on that second page, there was a note that would have turned the entire story upside down. Because the second page wasn't just about Catherine. It was about someone else in the royal family. And once you know who that person is, you begin to understand why the palace fought so hard to keep this quiet. It points to someone very close to the king. Someone who encouraged Catherine to return earlier than planned. And if that's true, her return wasn't just a personal decision. It was a palace directive. So why would anyone want the Princess of Wales back so quickly? Let me take you back to what was happening inside Buckingham Palace at that exact moment. King Charles was also facing his own health battle. He was stepping back from some duties. Prince William was being stretched thin. The monarchy looked fragile. The optics were terrible. Every week without Catherine was a week of headlines about a royal family in crisis. And in the midst of that chaos, someone needed to steady the ship. That someone couldn't be William. He was too emotional. It couldn't be Charles. He was too sick. So the pressure landed on Catherine. The family's greatest asset. The woman who never puts a foot wrong. Now imagine you're Catherine. You're recovering from serious surgery. You're still dealing with your own health challenges. And suddenly, you're told that the institution you were born to serve needs you. Not politely, but with urgency. You're told that your father-in-law, the king, is concerned. You're told that your husband is stressed beyond belief. You're told that the crowds need you. And no one says it outright, but the message is clear. Your recovery can wait. The crown can't. That's the moment this becomes a story about sacrifice, not health. And that leads us to a secret meeting at Windsor Castle. This wasn't announced. No photographers. No aides. Just a small group, the king, Prince William, and Catherine. And later, they say, the Queen Consort joined in. The argument lasted for hours. William, the husband, wanted his wife to follow the doctor's orders. But Charles, the king, was speaking as a monarch whose reign could depend on a show of confidence. He pointed to public opinion polls. He pointed to the upcoming events. He said the monarchy had been through enough scandals. He wanted Catherine front and center. And then Catherine spoke. She said she wanted to make her own choice. She didn't want to be treated as an invalid. She missed her work. She missed the people. She wanted to show the world that she was stronger than the rumors. But here's the twist. The leaked report didn't include that conversation. But one of the attendees wrote something down. And that note, too, found its way into the wrong hands. That note revealed something the palace still refuses to confirm. Catherine agreed to return on one condition. She asked for a private promise. She wanted her health status to remain a secret forever, even from the public. And she wanted to be the one to decide when she would step down again. In other words, the agreement wasn't about duty. It was about control. Catherine wanted to take ownership of her own story. And in a family where control is everything, that was a radical move. But let's go back even further. Because this isn't the first time a royal woman has had to choose between her health and her crown. When King George VI was dying of lung cancer, his doctors begged him to rest. He kept working until the end. When Queen Victoria mourned Albert, she disappeared from public life for years. She was harshly criticized. When Princess Diana struggled with bulimia, she was told to perform, to smile, to pretend. In every generation, the royal women have been expected to put the institution above themselves. Catherine knew this history. She knew exactly what she was signing up for. And maybe that's why she hesitated. But there's another name that keeps coming up in this story. And it's a name that was never supposed to be connected to that medical page. Prince Harry. Yes, Prince Harry. Around the time the report was being drafted, Harry's legal team had submitted another round of documents in his ongoing fight against the Home Office over security. In those documents, he quoted an unnamed senior royal who he claimed had lied about his safety. Palace sources say the king was furious. He believed Harry was using every available document to wage war on the family. And here's where the connection gets strange. Some royal insiders believe the leak of Catherine's medical report wasn't accidental. They think it was a deliberate distraction. Someone inside the palace wanted to shift media attention away from Harry's legal action and back onto a beloved royal figure. And what better story than the return of Kate, the nation's favorite princess? If that's true, then Catherine's return wasn't just about her health or her duty. It was part of a larger palace strategy. She became the shield for the monarchy's thinner reputation. The one person who could make everyone forget the infighting. And she did it. Because the morning she appeared, the headlines were hers. All the negative stories, the legal battles, the disputes, they faded into the background. The people saw Catherine, and they cheered. But the cost of that victory was private and painful. You could see it in her eyes if you looked closely. That forced smile. That controlled wave. Here's where the story becomes even more dramatic. Because that medical report wasn't the only secret Catherine was keeping. Hidden within the final pages, there is a section about her children. It mentions that she had requested a special family meeting before her return. She wanted to speak to George, Charlotte, and Louis alone. No cameras. No staff. No William. It took place in the private quarters at Adelaide Cottage. And what she told them was so heartbreaking that even the palace officials who overheard it had to leave the room. According to a source, Catherine said that she was going back to work for them. She said that their future mattered more than her comfort. She told George that it would be his duty one day to carry the family, and she wanted him to see how important it was to show strength. She told Charlotte that sometimes a princess has to be brave. And she told Louis, her youngest, that even though she would be tired, she would always be there for him. A child shouldn't have to hear that. No one should have to explain their illness to a 7-year-old in that way. And so, on the day of her official return, Catherine didn't just appear. With every step, she was carrying the weight of that conversation. She was carrying the king's expectations, William's fears, the public scrutiny, and her own personal exhaustion. But the palace hoped it was enough. They wanted to believe that her return would calm the waters. And at first, it did. But what happened next surprised everyone. Because within days of her first public appearance, the palace made a new announcement. It was in the middle of a list of routine royal updates. Charlotte would be accompanying her to the Wimbledon tennis tournament. No one thought much of it. But royal watchers knew the truth. Catherine's team had leaked a subtle clue: she wouldn't be appearing alone anymore. She would be surrounded by her children more often. And that wasn't just sweet family bonding. It was a calculated guarantee. If Catherine was shown to be a devoted mother, it would soften any future criticism, especially if she had to step away again. Let me tell you something about the palace. They never make a simple decision. Behind every scarf, every smile, every wave, there's a strategy. Then something unexpected happened. A group of journalists gained access to a second leaked memorandum. This one wasn't medical. It was administrative. It listed which royal family members would take over Catherine's engagements if she couldn't perform them. The names were not surprising. Duchess Sophie was listed. Princess Anne was listed. But next to the name Prince Harry, there was a single word, NO. No explanation. No comment. Just a blunt refusal. That detail sent a shockwave through royal circles. It meant that even in her absence, Catherine did not want any possibility of Harry stepping into her space. This is a family conflict that runs deeper than anyone realized. It's not just about who gets titles. It's about who is considered family and who is permanently outside it. And here is the twist that ties everything together. The same week Catherine decided to return, the king made a quiet adjustment to his own will. This adjustment had nothing to do with Harry or Meghan. It was about Catherine directly. Without any public explanation, the king assigned Catherine a direct role in the supervision of Charlotte's future estate. It was a symbolic gesture, but in royal terms, it was enormous. It meant that Charles saw Catherine as more than just William's wife. He saw her as a guardian of the next generation. He trusted her with one of his granddaughter's financial and emotional future. That trust was given in a private meeting between Charles and Catherine. And when William was told, he reportedly wept. People don't think William cries. But he does. Especially when it comes to her. So let me ask you a question. Was Catherine's return a triumph of spirit, or a surrender to palace pressure? That's what makes this story so complicated. She walked out with her head high, and she looked every bit the future queen. Strong. Composed. Loyal. And yet, behind that image, there was a woman who had been forced to make an impossible choice. Her health or her family name. Her private peace or her public position. Her choice tells us more about her than any interview ever could. It tells us that she will do anything for the crown. Even at her own expense. Even at risk to herself. And she did it when she could have said no. She could have locked the doors, stayed home, and focused solely on recovery. Most of us would have done the exact same thing. But Catherine didn't. She returned because she believed in something bigger than herself. And that belief is both noble and, in a way, deeply disturbing. Because it shows how much the monarchy demands from its brightest stars. And the thing is, we don't know the full truth yet. Portions of the medical report remain hidden. Sections are blacked out. The palace claims it's a privacy matter. But these same people rarely invoke privacy unless they have something to protect. Is there another health update they're not telling us? Did the report contain a long-term concern that changes her future as queen? And most importantly, will Catherine ever fully recover if she keeps putting the crown first? The answers to these questions could reshape the entire succession story. And right now, the palace is watching and waiting. They know the leaked documents have already raised more doubts than they resolved. So as you watch Catherine wave at the next public event, look closer. Notice the way she holds her body. Look at the brief pause before she responds. Remember that none of that facade is natural. Every gesture is a feature of a woman who has been trained to hide her pain. And behind her smile, there remains an unresolved battle between her duties and her health. That battle isn't over. It might never be over. And the fact that she continues to face it every single day. That's not weakness. That's remarkable strength. But it also means the story isn't finished. The return was only the beginning. What follows next could change the royal world entirely. Because those leaked medical reports also reached the desk of someone you wouldn't suspect. And that person has been keeping a copy. Not for blackmail. Not for money. But for their own survival. And one day, they just might use it. The real question isn't whether Catherine has returned to duty. It's what she had to overcome to get there. And what the palace is still hiding.